Welcome, everyone, to the Sports Injury Central podcast. I'm Thomas Casali with Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow. Well, Doc, it's our first podcast since the Super Bowl. Football season has officially ended, at least on the field. We got a lot of stuff coming up with the Combine and the NFL Draft. We're going to look at some NBA. We're going to look at some Major League Baseball today. But since this is our first podcast since the game ended, why don't we put a little bow on the season? Some things happened in the Super Bowl I'd like to get your thoughts on. Obviously, the biggest one, Odell Beckham Jr. injured in the game, ACL tear. I know people want to know what's the time frame. Is he going to be ready for next season? You have some strong thoughts on this, so let's start off with that.
Absolutely. And, I thought after Super Bowl, I'd take a deep breath and we got some time. But, with Sports Injury Central basketball coverage and baseball coming on and our expansion, it's actually been busy. Odell Beckham, interestingly enough, has only recently confirmed the ACL tear. We said it in game that it was a re-tear of the ACL, unfortunately. And here's the thing. Look, I'm not trying to hate on Odell. I rather like him. We've actually had a little bit of a correspondence. But the reality is he had an October ACL the previous season and really wasn't ready to go and nowhere near 100% at the beginning of this season. By halfway through, he got better, like we thought. This one is a mid-February ACL tear, so a 4-month difference. So even if he were to recover more quickly, the timeline is not in his favor. The good news is a second ACL doesn't always mean longer recovery. We've seen it before. I've seen it before where it can be shorter. And assuming there's no additional damage that we don't know about worse than the first time, here's why it can be shorter. You're working in the same areas. It's sort of like digging up your yard in the same pathway, right? It's not damaging other parts of your yard if you're fixing the sprinklers a second time or whatever it is. So it can be faster, but to match this upcoming season, to match this last season he had a 4+ month head start. So this is where, you're going to expect at least a PUP to start the season and then see what happens from there. Now, does this mean the Rams will take him because they know what's happening and sign a 1-year deal knowing once again late season help is on the way? Don't know. Is this a slight discount with a multi-year deal with the team knowing that he'll ultimately be there? I mean, it's been done before. I mean, teams have – look at the Titans. They drafted Jeffrey Simmons knowing he was coming off an ACL, wasn't going to be ready in the beginning because they got a discount in terms of their draft position. It's worked out for them. So it's not doesn't mean Odell won't sign. I just don't think there's a realistic chance he can be anywhere close to himself or ready week 1. And it's just going to be a longer timeline. It'd be great news if he were back, in December, November, and anywhere near himself.
Yeah, so that's interesting because, as you said, he's going to be looking for a contract. The Rams kind of have a little inside info here, right? They know what the injury is. They kind of know where he's going to be at a certain point. So I think that'll be an interesting storyline to follow this offseason, Doc, to see how much interest is in OBJ for next season. You can come to, remember, sixscore.com. We have all the stuff on OBJ. We have all the NBA stuff. We're going to talk about that soon. Major League Baseball now.
Odell had promised that he would, or has indicated he would come on our podcast in this offseason. But this was to talk about his season and recovery from his ACL. But that was before he retore it. So we'll see. We haven't even reached out to him yet. Let's just give him time to breathe, recover from surgery, and then we can reach out.
Yeah, and before we move on to out of football, Doc, into some other sports, one other injury. I know you don't think it's too serious, but let's just get it out of the way here. Joe Burrow, the injury itself, right, isn't long. One thing that you said, though, that caught my attention a couple days after the game, you noticed that he was in shotgun there at the end, and you wondered if that had something to do with the injury. Get into that a little bit.
Well, in game, when he went down, and obviously he was screaming and holding his right knee, the first thing we said, that's not the ACL knee, don't worry. That's not an ACL tear mechanism on the right knee. It's an MCL, sprain on the ligament on the inside. And because it's the Super Bowl, we don't see how he's not going to return to play. But certainly it's going to affect his mobility, and his over-rushing prop was dead at that point in time. In all game, he was ball out and not trying to run much, but it was dead at that point in time. But on third down and fourth down, I found it interesting at the end of the game. Throughout the rest of the game, there was a lot of shotgun, but you could argue that was the scheme and other things. But, I mean, when it's 1 yard to go for a first down, third down, especially the fourth down, most teams go under center. And if you're going to throw the ball, you want to go under center. Why? To, make them cover the 8 gaps and, play tighter formation. But Joe Burrow probably couldn't really do a quarterback sneak, and he wasn't going to be that mobile. But also, from under center to drop back is harder with that MCL. So with the shotgun, I mean, a couple years ago, Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers had an MCL, and he played exclusively shotgun, and we indicated that ahead of time. But they're mostly a shotgun team anyway, so it wasn't that big a deal. But it makes him not have to drop back, and that's probably why he was in that position. And maybe that's what allowed Aaron Donald to pin his ears back. And you can talk blocking scheme and the other things. But the other thing that I found interesting about the end of that game is at the time, I don't know if people noticed it, after a first down catch to Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd had a 9-yard pass reception. If you go back and look at it, it seemed a done deal that he would get a first down. Eric Weddle, 37-year-old Eric Weddle, with the green dot and a torn pec, can't wrap, but came up and shouldered him and knocked him back just short of the line of game for a first down. Didn't convert on second down. Then here comes third down, the Samir Perine run that Donald. And here comes fourth down and the hurried throw, almost sack, that ends the ball game. So if you really trace it back, Eric Weddle made a key play there to stop him short of the first down. Otherwise, maybe the Bengals keep rolling and get a field goal or more.
Yeah, no question about it. So, well, I mean, it was an exciting game. Went down to the wire. You can't ask for anything more than that to cap off the season. But as you know, Doc, the NFL season is never really officially over. There's always something going on. Next, we got the NFL Combine, and news has come out with that recently that they are going to a bubble, which I was surprised about, to be honest with you, with the way things are all over the place. But you have a strong opinion about that. You actually wrote an article for Outkick that's up right now that you can go read. But why don't you give us your takes on why you think that might be a mistake?
Well, those of you who have followed have known that, look, I'm vaccinated. I'm not trying to be political. COVID is real. But, we've talked about how the NFL has handled it, and they did change their rules at the end of the season, and it sort of has worked out. But here's the reality on the NFL combines in the bubble. This is not a political statement. This is just looking at it medically. 2 things I would say, big points. Number 1, to have a bubble like the NBA had, and when the NBA had it, they did it right. It's entry testing to ensure the security of the bubble. It's quarantining to only let people in the bubble that don't have disease, and to keep the bubble people separate from everyone else. Okay, I haven't heard about the entry testing. Certainly with the short in and out, we don't hear of a quarantine. And there's mingling. They're going to interview with team executives. They're going to see all the team doctors and athletic trainers. They're not in a true bubble. And the essence of a bubble is to keep a clean, non-COVID population separate from everyone else. That's not the case. Maybe they're using the wrong language, but to say that this is a bubble is just not true. It doesn't meet the medical definition, and it's not a bubble. And because of that, I don't see how it provides any additional security. Because remember in the NBA, there were stories of people had to get food delivered, and because someone went out and met the Uber driver, they were no longer in the bubble. I mean,
Yeah.
these guys are going to get their knees examined. Unless you're saying all the doctors and trainers and team executives are in a bubble as well, you're really not putting these college guys into a bubble. So I don't love the idea. I don't know that it makes sense. Of course, there's the boycott. Maybe it'll end now. But I think the boycott also is for other reasons. The agents are just mad that they won't have access to their guys. But here's the other point I would make, and I think this is where some people have gotten it wrong in national media, in social media. This is not the NFL's decision. The NFL has made pretty good decisions all the way through. The NFL Scouting Combine, officially is the Scouting Combine, is a private effort. They are not part of the NFL. Certainly the NFL has a ton of power. If they wanted to do something differently, they could influence the Scouting Combine to do it differently. And all 32 teams pay into this fund to make it work. But this is not, it's a little bit like the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame, is a separate entity from the NFL. There's some relationship, I get it, but it's a separate entity. Same here. The Scouting Combine is a separate entity. Dr. Alan Sills of the NFL did not make this decision. A, the NFL is not part of this directly. B, to me, it seems like a silly decision, and I haven't seen Dr. Sills make silly decisions, and he's made good decisions. So that's, wherever the blame is, it's not to 345 Park Avenue. Now, maybe Goodell and the NFL will come in and say what they want to do, and the Scouting Combine will change. I don't know. But it's not coming directly from the NFL. And people who are observing that this bubble policy runs against what they did in the playoffs and Super Bowl, they're correct. It does. But it's not the decision made by the same group of people.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to monitor, Doc. Like you said, a lot of people are upset. We'll see if they end up changing the rules. But I don't think the way you explain it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense to me either. So, hey, either
well, it
way,
sounds like we made the right decision. We were talking about going to combines and providing.
Yeah.
But with all this stuff and whatever, look, I'd rather not. I've been to Indy 20 plus times. I call it Groundhog Day for the combines. Look, St. Elmo's and the shrimp cocktail and the horseradish and the whole things, and it's just day after day, guys. I've done it for over 20 years, so I'm not unhappy about. I'm kind of happy that we're not going, especially with this. But I have a feeling by next year we'll all be going as we provide expanded coverage.
Yeah, and no matter how they do it, there'll be a combine. We'll have all the injury news.
And by the way, as much as the headlines are 150 athletes and the agents got together, they're going to boycott. Sort of. They're not going to boycott the medical exams. See, you can get a workout at Pro Day, and if you're a top pick, especially a quarterback, you can just opt out of the workouts because everyone will come to your Pro Day. But nobody opts out of medical because at Pro Days there is no medical. So even though about half the athletes are threatening a boycott, they're not going to boycott the medical. The medical part's still going to go on. They're just going to boycott the workouts and make teams come for the Pro Days, which the teams are probably coming for anyways. But just like on the one hand, it's not a true bubble. On the other hand, it's not a true boycott. They're still going to go and do the medical portion.
Yeah, and bottom line is guys who are going to get drafted high are going to get drafted high. That's it. The combine, whether they have, it's not going to affect anybody in terms of draft status or teams' interest in them. That's just not going to happen. So Doc, moving forward now, it's an NBA season. As we're at the All-Star break, we got the second half. We got a lot going on. If you go to sixscore.com right now, it's all NBA. We got a ton of NBA news up, a lot of injuries going on. I want to get your thoughts on a couple of the big ones, though. Chris Paul, we found out, has a right thumb injury, expected to be out 6 to 8 weeks. Can you give us a little insight on that, and if he could come back sooner, or will it be a little longer?
Sure, and as we get into basketball, understand, basketball is a contact sport. It's just not a collision sport like football is. And there's still lots of traumatic injuries, and that's what we've been covering. And to be clear, yeah, I get it. Everyone knows me as Pro Football Doc. What are you doing with basketball? I've actually, quote, covered couple of NBA teams, but not as the head team physician. Assisted with Chicago Bulls, Minnesota Timberwolves, etc. So I have NBA experience. It's just not as broad and in depth as like 17 years as a head team physician in the NFL, like for football. So that's kind of why we did that first. But as part of the expansion, we now have a panel of doctors, the pro basketball docs, and among the group include the former Chicago Bulls head team physician, who was featured in Michael Jordan's Last Dance during the pandemic, and the Houston Rockets team physician. And I rely on these guys and others, run ideas across each other. And so these opinions, Chris Paul and others, are often amalgamated opinions. I've invited them to come on and media-wise and do stuff, but they have busy practices, and so far they haven't chosen to do it. So I'm speaking for them as a group. Chris Paul, first, he heard it and was ejected from the game a minute later, so we didn't see how his thumb did really. And then this soft cast thing that we see, and then the announcement of an avulsion. An avulsion is less fracture than ligament tear. So we're waiting for ligament healing. They haven't said which ligament. He's had radial collateral ligament injury in his thumb before. This could be ulnar collateral. 6 to 8 weeks is what I think the timeline is for him to try and return. And that puts us onto the cusp of the end of the regular season, heading into playoffs. So as we indicated, as soon as we saw him in that soft cast, this is a multi-week deal. And with news of the avulsion, it's a 6 to 8 week deal at this point in time. And he should be able to return after that in some sort of modified, much smaller thumb splint that he can dribble and shoot with.
So when he comes back, okay? Anything we really have to worry about with him?
No, I think when he comes back, he'll be okay. My guess is that defensively he might not reach as much with his right thumb to not re-jam it. But I think he'll be fine. The question is, where will his team be, and obviously flow of the game and game shape and all that stuff. But since it's a thumb, upper extremity injury, he can be working out and doing everything he needs to do.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye on that. We'll have plenty of updates at sixscore.com. Doc, another big name that we have not seen in a while, Zion Williamson. And you don't think we're going to see him for a lot longer. I know the team puts out stuff, well, we're going to reevaluate him and all this. What's going on with Zion, and where are we going not only this year but heading into next season?
Well, this is opinion, right? And reading the tea leaves and seeing this. Back in August, when Zion had the injury and announced with the surgery, there were people saying, 8 weeks. And I was saying, nah, not for a guy that big and for the sport of basketball. I was saying the earliest would be 3 months. Earliest. That already took us to November. And that is an absolute best case scenario. And when November passed and December, there was indications of not only not completely healing, but there was a report of regression of healing. And for a stress fracture, that's really bad news when you see it go a different way. I think it was back in December that we put out at SICK and saying, second surgery is likely coming. I don't care if it's PRP or bone graft or whatever they injected stem cells into the area. This is an avascular area and second surgery is likely coming. We didn't buy into, in a month we're rechecking. Look, I know everyone's going to jump on his weight. I think obviously with his foot he hasn't been able to work out. Yeah, there are other ways to work out and weight. And the weight doesn't make his problem any easier, no question about that. But realistically, is once a stress fracture isn't healing, we expected the second surgery. And just this last week, there was a report that a second surgery might be happening. And that's the first report outside of ours saying that I think it's happening. And I think at this point of the season, you can count on his year is done. There's nothing magical they're going to do. Obviously, the team's record plays a role in this too. In the final 2 months here, there's nothing magical that's going to happen where he's going to play. Now, you're asking about next year. If he has his second surgery with bone graft, they can get it to heal over 3, 4, certainly get it to heal in under 6 months. That's usually, and he can get the weight off. But the most important thing is just to get healed completely. And for a revision surgery, it may indeed be a 4 or 6 month timeline. That's another reason I say, turn the page, hit the reset button. Why are you waiting for this year? If you don't do the second surgery to ensure healing, you start to jeopardize next season some. So cut your losses at this point. They're not in playoff contention right now. He's not miraculously going to come back and then the Pelicans are going to make the playoffs. Cut your losses. Get that foot fixed aggressively and completely. Take the 4 to 6 months and let's turn the page to next season would be what I think should happen. But once again, I haven't examined him, and this is from afar.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how he comes back next year and what kind of condition, what kind of health. So it hasn't been the career early on that Zion has been hoping for. Doc, so another big name, and we do cover injuries outside of basketball, baseball, and football if they're big names, and there are not many bigger names than Tiger Woods. And he came out recently and said that he's a little frustrated with what's going on in the recovery process. But you've been saying for a while, Tiger's not playing in the Masters, and we might not see him, for quite a bit here. Give us your thoughts on Tiger and when he could possibly return.
First of all, I am not a Tiger hater. He's been unbelievable. The fact that he came back from 5 back surgeries, including a fusion, and still won is unbelievable. But he is now 46, and when the accident happened, when we caught word of the fractures and the soft tissue injury, we said easily then, he's not playing this calendar year. His anniversary just passed of his injury, and there was some hope that father-son tournament, the PNC championships, but that was 36 holes in a cart. Big difference, and Tiger pointed that out, that you have to walk 6 holes of golf. You have to play in the Pro-Am, you have to get a practice round in, and you got to play 4 rounds of golf to win. And this is why we published that he is not playing in this year's Masters the first week of April, period. It's only 6 weeks away. And look, I've had the fortune of attending the Masters, and the first thing that everyone says, whenever I brought friends or whatever, is, wow, the course is so hilly and undulating. You don't see that on TV, right? And that's the thing. I don't believe without swinging a club that Tiger could walk all those miles on those hills. And that's kind of what Tiger is hinting at. He made comments about golf cart and being able to walk. It's one thing to swing a club. He's unbelievable. He could probably work around some things, but he can't walk the course right now and not be sore. And that's why I'm very confident that I don't see how he plays in the Masters. Certainly not competitively. I mean, ceremonially, I'm sure he could play, but not in a competitive fashion. And right now, you're looking, before he comes back, he might be 47, missing close to 2 years of golf, coming off the back surgeries. I mean, at this point in time, I hope he makes a good comeback. Golf needs Tiger. Tiger needs golf. But at this point, you have to think Jack's record's kind of safe right now.
Yeah, the injuries have certainly mounted up with Tiger, but we'll be keeping track of that. Doc, I'm going to give you the last word, but before I do, I'm going to just set up the off season for everybody. Again, go to sixscore.com for all the sports injury news, at ProFootballDoc on Twitter. Make sure to subscribe to all our videos here. So for the off season, Doc, we're going to look at other sports, but we're also going to have some guests on. I know you and I are working on getting some people on the show. You mentioned OBJ. We'll see if we can get him on, so some big name people. But I'll let you close it out. We're looking forward to our expanded coverage into other sports beyond football, but we still got plenty of football. Combine, draft, we'll be all over it.
Yeah, we used to be, one of the things I was worried about is in the off season, was there enough football news? There's never not been enough football news. From combines to draft to injury updates, reports of off-season surgery, recovery timelines, trades, how health in fact impacts free agency. It's a year-round thing just for football. But this year we're excited about expanding our coverage in basketball, involving the other doctors, in baseball when the lockout ends here. We've already put up some articles about our thoughts about Acuna and Mike Trout and others as we head into baseball season. So this will be our busiest offseason yet by far because of everything else that we'll do. But whether it's a big UFC injury or a March Madness situation, Sports Injury Central, go there first. We will have the first information, like the Super Bowl with Weddle's pec, Odell Beckham's ACL, Matt Stafford's ankle's fine, Joe Burrow will stay in the game. We'll have the information first based off of video and our analysis. And, it should be a lot of fun. And thanks to the ever-growing staff for producing all the good content. It's certainly no longer a one-man show. It's a multi-person team effort, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. Make sure you stop by and check us out. And Doc and I will see you soon.